Okay, so continuing about Ferguson, Missouri. So we just went through the actual series of events that really occurred. Now we know this now because after the facts came in and they had all the grand jury and all the evidence and blah blah blah, we can clearly state series of events and how they laid out. But before we could do that, the media went berserko in their usual fashion. The now famous "hands up, don't shoot" mantra was born on this day when the media happily reported that witnesses saw Brown raise his hands in supplication and begged Officer Wilson not to shoot him. Problem is, it never happened. But it continues to be the lie that wouldn't die, even to this day. Many witnesses later admitted that they purposely lied about the incident. Some said to be part of something. Just to be part of something. That's a good reason to lie about something like that. To be part of something. Social media, the newly formed Black Lives Matter group, and many others took their vested interest in the narrative of an execution-style murder and used it as an excuse to perpetrate lies and violence. The riots that followed lasted for months, on and off. Among those siding with the protesters was Missouri State Senator Maria Chappelle Nadal, who was arrested in said riots. Senator Claire McCaskill, who just lost her job, by the way, in the last election. Bye, Claire. Senator Claire McCaskill also was there, protesting alongside the protesters. Washington Post and a Huffington Post reporter both got arrested, possibly unnecessarily, at the incident. Mary Moore of CNN, Cornell West, and a whole host of other people decided it would be a good idea to go down there and be in amongst the rioters and protesters. Couldn't give a whit about Officer Wilson. Obama couldn't help himself, of course. Now, I say that all knowing that Trump can't help himself either. So I don't like it when he does it either, when he doesn't know all the facts. None of this should happen, but Obama started it. Couldn't help himself, complaining that about excessive force by police against peaceful protesters. Peaceful. Because of the constant agitation of the crowds formed in protest, combined with some issues of questionable police tactics, they weren't exactly doing it the right way, you might say. Police messed up too. The riots continued and gave rise to a more militant set of protests that resulted in unnecessary escalation, including shooting at cops, swarming political rallies, etc. CNN had an entire group of panelists and with their hands up on set one day in solidarity. All 4 women like this. Idiots. That's not exactly unbiased reporting, is it? There were 3 separate autopsies on Michael Brown, each corroborating Wilson's testimony, and found that Brown's DNA was on Wilson's gun and that Brown had cannabinoids, cannabis, the hallucinogenic substances found in marijuana use, in his system. So much for the gentle giant, as they try to convince everyone he was. This guy was not a gentle giant. He was a bully. And a bully on marijuana. Officer Wilson had to go into seclusion with his new wife amid numerous threats to his life. And his life has been summarily ruined forever. April 2015, soon after Ferguson, Missouri incidents, a new incident in Baltimore, sparked by the death of a man named Freddie Gray, occurred. Freddie Gray was taken into custody after fleeing from 2 police officers when they crossed his path, meaning when they saw him. He just started to run away. And they're like, well, he must be running away from a police officer for a reason. Let's go find out why. When he was caught, it was discovered that he had a switchblade on him, which at the time apparently was not legal. Video showed the officers dragging Gray into a police van while he was screaming. Didn't want to be arrested, I guess. Witnesses claim Gray was beaten with batons, bent over unnaturally, and held with a knee into his neck. The van made 4 other stops after they picked up Gray. Stop number 1 was to add leg irons due to him becoming irate in the back of the van. It was recorded by cell phone, by the way, that adding of leg irons. At the 3rd stop, which picked up another prisoner, Gray was checked on. The final stop, which was at the police station, paramedics treated Gray and then transported him to a hospital where he fell into a coma. The media suggested Gray suffered from a rough ride, meaning he was purposely not restrained with a seatbelt, bounced around back there. Unfortunately, or ultimately, his family's attorney said that Gray suffered from a heart attack at least once and was resuscitated without regaining consciousness. In a coma, he underwent extensive surgery to save his life. They claimed he had 3 fractured vertebrae, injuries to his voice box, and his spine was 80% severed from his neck, which led to his death a week after his arrest. And the rush to judgment part. The 6 officers involved were suspended. The police commissioner said, "We know our police officers failed to get him the medical attention in a timely manner multiple times. We know." This is before investigating it, when they were suspended only. The medical examiner ruled Gray's death a homicide. And the officers were taken into custody. They were all given separate trials. This was for their own protection, I suppose. Brand new state's attorney for Maryland, Baltimore City, a woman named Marilyn Mosby, a black woman who was dead set on making a name for herself, went out of her way to get in front of the cameras well ahead of the grand jury and declared the cops guilty. She used race baiting tactics, even though 3 of the cops were black, and fueled a riot in Baltimore with her words. State's attorney. Later, she let off a thug who later killed a police officer while she was running for election in 2018. Just to give you an idea who this chick is. She blamed others for the failure, by the way. Never herself. She took money from George Soros in order to put bad prosecutors in her office. Into office, I should say. Who give criminals the benefit of the doubt over cops. She wanted those kinds of prosecutors around her in her office. So she took money from George Soros in order to do that. That's who Marilyn Mosby is. Real winner. 5 of the 6 cops sued Mosby, by the way, for malicious prosecution. In 2017, she was disbarred. Riots went on for 3 days in Baltimore. Put Baltimore in a state of emergency and sent 130 police officers to the hospital. 3 cops were found not guilty, and the other 3 had the charges dropped, necessarily. The following riots, much of which was instigated by Black Lives Matter, of course, which lasted from April 25th to May 3rd, caused $9 million in damages to the city's businesses as a result of looting and fires and other things. Freddie Gray, a multiple repeat offender who sold heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine in his own neighborhood, his own community, got a nice mural painted celebrating his life. Something seem askew to you about that whole little story? All the wrong people getting blamed. All the wrong people getting turned into martyrs. Let us now change the subject to hate crime hoaxes like Tawana Brawley again. In August of 2017, we're going to talk about a person called Nikki Jolly, or Jolie. I'm not sure how this name is pronounced. A 54-year-old transgender man, born as a female, so it's really a female. Sorry. She was a gay rights activist and was actually named Citizen of the Year in her hometown of Michigan following this incident. A fire burned down the house she lived in. It wasn't his house, her house, its house, killing 2 dogs and 3 cats in the process. Sorry, buddy. And it posed a danger to neighboring homes before it was finally put out. The entire LGBTQ MOUSC community rallied behind this hate crime and hate crime perpetrated against Nikki and her partner. Thousands of dollars were raised on their behalf of the two victims. Within a few months, $40,000 was raised. After a year-long investigation, Jolie was charged with felony arson and later 2 counts of animal cruelty. Rushed to judgment. Turns out Jolie was not happy with the supposedly low level of queerness during that year's gay pride festival at a public park, and the low turnout. And so he was angry. She was angry. It was angry. And burned down his own house, or the house that she was living in. Actor Rondi Reed of the Mike and Molly show jumped on the incident, uploading a video which called Jolie a good, upstanding citizen, and blamed the incident on hate politics, basically insinuating the president, Trump, and his administration was the cause. How convenient for them. Michigan Senator Debbie Stabenow stuck her neck out, citing the terrible and hateful act. Turns out the guy did it himself. The girl, the woman, the whatever. In September of 2017, 5 dorm message boards at the Air Force Academy in Colorado had racial slurs written on them. The superintendent of the school, Lieutenant General J. Silveria, condemned this hate and racism in an impassioned 90-minute speech in front of 4,000 cadets. CNN played the speech over and over and over and over and over again, or parts of it, I should say, with headlines at Air Force Academy, and Air Force Academy head to racists, get out. Then, one of the 5 students whose board had the slurs written on it confessed to writing the slurs. He was, and he had to leave the academy, or he chose to leave the academy, or was expelled from the academy, whatever. He was black, he was a football player, and he was the one who did it. Rushed to judgment. Much. Oh yeah. Rather than admit they were wrong and apologize for falsely accusing innocent people, Silveria and a spokesman for the school, a Lieutenant Colonel Hermitage, said it doesn't matter anyway, and doubled down on the obvious of a need to condemn racism, continuing his push for diversity, because he was one of these diversity dorks that used this incident to make a point. How very liberal of him. We're getting near the end, folks. Bear with me. A couple more parts and we should be done. See you on the next one.